Have you ever been in a heated debate where you felt like you were talking to a brick wall? Maybe it was over politics at Thanksgiving, or that one time that your colleague insisted their clearly wrong idea was right. We've all been there. By the end of this video, you will have 5 key tools to overcome conflict when things may feel like they are totally out of control. I feel like conflict is everywhere, don't you? And I also feel like people thrive and feel important making conflict escalate. So I've been in meetings lately that are so like this. I don't know if you can relate, but in my corporate role, I've been in a tough situation with the product line that I'm managing that's been in the process of transitioning business units due to some company reorganization. The transition is going okay. It's not going as well as I would love it to go, but it's going okay in some respects, and in others it's not. And most of it's due to lack of realistic plans that includes collaboration from both sides of the aisle. So I was just in a meeting this past Friday with a cross-functional team member and some team managers and leadership, where it just became a match of pointing fingers, standing their ground on how their individual departments would not sign off on a product release because there's gaps due to this transition. So they're puffing their chests out with their big egos, they're talking loudly, so their voices are heard loud and clear. And I don't know if it's just that I've been in so many meetings like this throughout my career that I just sat really embarrassed for these fools. They are all tough and they talk tough, but they never execute for the betterment of the company and what's going on. And it just is so crazy to me that I see this go on and on and on. And it's pretty much no matter where I work. So I can't say it's just my employer today. I see it everywhere. And what I notice the most is just a lot of noise, a lot of blame, a lot of chaos, and most noticeably, a desire to escalate the conflict, which totally blows my mind. I didn't hear ways of collaborating. I didn't hear input on ways we can close gaps. I didn't hear ideas and see people standing up to try to help. All I heard was blame. So how is this useful? This happens every single day, and my story isn't one to complain or act like a victim because I just don't have that victim mentality. But I seem to see it everywhere, and I don't know if you guys can relate with this. But my story is more a story about how we all need to think, act, and respond differently when we are in these high conflict finger-pointing situations, especially when our backs are against the wall. Because it just happens all the time with different things, not even just in your job, but also in your life with your family oftentimes, right? Here's the thing, conflict isn't the villain of the story. It's totally not. But it's how we handle conflict that makes or breaks the situation. So, in fact, there's studies that show that 85% of employees, they experience conflict at work, and unresolved conflict, it, believe it or not, costs businesses an average of $359 billion with a B in lost productivity annually. That's year over year. And you heard that right, 359 billion. I was just blown away by that. But I see it every day, so I can't say that I don't see it coming. But year over year, that's a lot of money to lose for a business. So meanwhile, in personal relationships, a lack of healthy conflict resolution, it's one of the top predictors of dissatisfaction and even divorce. In other words, knowing how to navigate disagreements in these high conflict situations isn't just a nice to have. It's a superpower in both your career and in your personal life. So think about how valuable this can be. So how do we master conflict instead of letting it master us? That is the question of the day, right? But it all comes down to our communication skills, including effective dialogue. So it all comes down to the words we use. So some tools that may help you, I know that they've helped me in the past and they help me on a regular basis, is tool number one. We want to listen like we're a hostage negotiator. I know that sounds crazy, but FBI negotiators, they don't diffuse life or death situations by just shouting louder. They use active listening. They use mirroring. They label emotions and they paraphrase. So try this the next time you're in a tough situation, in a tough conversation. Mirroring. Repeat the last few words that the other person said. So saying something like, so you feel like this project is unfair? Like a question, to show you're engaged. You can also try the labeling technique by saying something like, it sounds like you're frustrated because your ideas are not being heard. Right? So we're kind of showing our active listening skills, showing how we can take these skills and put them into different words that sounds like we're more empathetic, we're more caring, right? And we could also try paraphrasing. So saying something like, what I'm hearing is that you're worried about missing out on a deadline. Am I getting that right? So it's just bringing it back to the person and what they're trying to say. And if you are not capturing correctly and they're like, no, that's not what I'm saying, that's even better. Because sometimes I think that we assume that we understand what the other person is trying to say without asking some good questions to clarify, right? Because I don't know if you've recognized this when you're in heated situations, but people just start like rambling on with all this word salad, and sometimes like it's really hard to follow what they're even talking about in the first place. So this is a way to not only make it sound like you're listening to them, but provide and bring in that clarity to the conversation and hopefully diffuse things a bit. So studies show that when people feel heard, their defense walls lower, making them more open to those solutions that you can do together. And in fact, a study from Harvard, it found that negotiators who actively listened were 3 times more likely to reach a successful agreement. 3 times. I'll take 3 times any day, because sometimes just getting 1 time is hard. And if it works in a crisis situation, it can certainly help you to handle all of this office drama or some family disagreements that might happen at that Thanksgiving dinner, right? Tool number 2 is let's find some common ground and fast, right? Negotiating and high conflict situations, oftentimes they spur up because there's not this good communication going on, and everyone feels like if I don't win this, they lose. It's like a win or lose situation, right? But that is not the case. Research shows that people are 67% more likely to compromise if they feel a shared identity with the other person. So instead of focusing on your differences, let's highlight the common goals that you have. Saying something like, we both want this project to succeed, so let's figure out a way forward. Bam, right? You both have interest in the right direction, but it's about how do we come together for a good resolution. One trick here is finding a mutual yes. So a statement both parties can agree on. And even a simple trick like, or a statement saying we both want to be treated fairly, it can shift the tone from adversarial to cooperative, right? Because it makes us look like we're not trying to get ahead of them. We're not trying to beat them. We're not trying to be right. We're trying to get this done. So neuroscientists have found that common ground triggers dopamine release, believe it or not, which is a great thing, right? Making collaboration feel rewarding instead of combative. And another way to establish common ground is through storytelling. So when we share some personal experiences, we activate the brain's mirror neurons. So it makes it easier for others to empathize with us. Next time you're in a conflict, try saying, I had a similar experience and here's how I worked through it. You'll be surprised how quickly the walls come down. And that's what we want, because otherwise the conversation is going nowhere, right? Tool number 3, let's take a pause and then respond. I think it's probably the number one thing that you should do. If you can kind of make it a habit of every time, whether you're in a conflict situation or just being asked something in a conversation, pause, take a nice deep breath, breathe out, and we all feel like we're bringing ourselves down, especially if we feel like we're walking into a more anxious or high touch situation. But if you do it on a regular basis, and you don't have to make it look as obvious as I just did, but give it a shot. Take a pause, then respond, and most importantly, do what you have to do to not react. Because people that are crazy, people that are, conflict people, they love the reaction. I think they thrive on that. So when emotions run high, our brain's amygdala, it hijacks all of our rational thought. And that's why we sometimes see things that we regret. How many times have we been there? I think we've all been there. If you haven't been there, I think you're lying to yourself. But before responding, take a breath, count to 5, and ask yourself, what is my goal in this conversation? What am I trying to achieve here? And that small pause could turn a conflict into a collaboration. And additionally, practicing this cognitive reframing, mentally shifting your perspective, it can lower your emotional intensity. I know that I can get triggered really easily sometimes. I know I can become very emotional with things that are very close to me, things I'm working on, things that, I care a lot about. So instead of seeing the other person as an opponent, let's start viewing them as a partner in problem solving. So how can we work together to solve this issue? A study in the Journal of Conflict Resolution found that people who reframe conflicts, such as joint problem solving, rather than battles, were 40% more likely to reach a positive outcome. So one powerful reframing trick can be turn me into, or this me versus you, into us versus the problem. So we want to work together. How can we gang up together to get rid of this problem? Instead of saying, you never listen to my ideas, try saying something like, I think we both want to find the best solution here. How can we make sure that all of our ideas are heard? Right? It sounds like you want to work with that person instead of being wrong versus right. Tool number 4 is know when to walk away. Sometimes you just have to walk. I think you've all been there. I think sometimes that you're just getting in arguments, you're trying to maybe even use some of these tactics to deflate things, and the person that you're involved with is just highly narcissistic, just doesn't care, isn't reading your cues, isn't looking for a resolution. They just want to be the conflict magnet, right? So not every conflict needs to be solved in the moment. Sometimes the best strategy is to take a break and maybe revisit the discussion later with a clearer head, because we all sometimes get too much in our head. And when we step back, we can look at things a little bit differently, right? But research from MIT suggests that taking a cooling off period of even 10 minutes, it can significantly improve rational decision making. So walking away doesn't mean that you're giving up, that you're calling it quits, giving in. It means that you're coming back stronger. But here's the key here. If you walk away, set a clear timeline to revisit the discussion. So saying something like, let's take a break and come back to this in an hour. It ensures that the issue isn't ignored, but instead approached with a fresh perspective, right? So give that a shot. And a bonus tool here is use the 5-to-1 rule. And what that means is it's almost like a 5-to-1 positivity ratio. Research from Dr. John Gottman, he's a leading expert in relationships. He found that for every negative interaction, you need at least 5 positive interactions to maintain a healthy relationship. So when you think about that, that's crazy, right? So every one wrong thing or a negative thing that goes in a negative direction, you need like 5 times that just to kind of circle back and kind of smooth things out with someone. So let's start staying away from these negative situations so we don't have to work so hard. We can work smarter, not harder, right? And that means if you've a heated disagreement, follow it up with some positive interactions, like acknowledging the other person's perspective, expressing appreciation, or even sharing a joke. Sometimes laughter is the best medicine, right? And the principle doesn't just apply to romantic relationships. It works in the workplace too. So a study from the University of Michigan, they found that high-performing teams had a 5.6 to 1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. So the takeaway here is resolving conflict is just one piece of the puzzle, but building goodwill between conflicts is just as important. So what is your challenge this week? How can you make this work for you? The next time that you find yourself in a disagreement, use one of these tools. Give them a shot. I mean, what do you have to lose, right? They're free. And sometimes they're in the moment. Like, even if you have to make a list of these on your phone, sometimes I have just in my notes, I have different things that when I'm in different situations, think this, say this, just for some, quick words to say, because sometimes we get all wrapped up in our heads, our emotions get the best of us, and we can't think. We can't find the words that we really want to say. So the next time you find yourself in a disagreement, use one of these tools. Whether it's a tough chat with your boss, your partner, or a person who clearly took your parking spot. Remember, mastering conflict isn't about turning tension into transformation. It's about making things kind of just establishing things to, I would say, maybe some common ground, at least, right? You could be, a rock star and really transform the whole situation. But if you can at least kind of diffuse the negativity and bring it down to a more settling type of discussion, you will get far through whatever project or issue that you're going through at the time. So which tool do you think you would try first about turning all of this escalation into something more grand? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. So I hope this content was valuable. I hope it's something that maybe you've experienced before and you can do a better job next time. I know I'm always trying to do a better job next time. And share this if you find it valuable. Also subscribe if you do. And thank you for joining me today, and we will see you on the next video.